It was when I stopped searching for home within others and lifted the foundations of home within myself. I found there were no roots more intimate than those between a mind and body that have decided to be whole. That's a piece by Rupi Kaur, and a piece that both Jessica and myself felt encapsulated the conversation we shared, which you are just about to enjoy. It was a conversation really exploring the connection between the inner worlds and the outer worlds, the ways that all that is showing up in the world in this time, with both, I suppose, twin pandemics, the Black Lives Matter and the surfacing of the radical injustices, as well as COVID-19. What is this reflecting about our internal environment, and how through a kind of, or a deeper sense of sacred activism, can we take responsibility for what's ours and at the same time take radical action, recognizing our privilege that to do the inner work is sometimes treated as an escape or an avoidance. And at the same time that to really honor the privilege we have, we must do a level of the inner work whilst doing the outer work. And so this is a big theme in our conversation. We explore the kind of internal injustices in our internal family systems. And Jessica is someone who I met in Bali about this time last year, and we had many brilliant conversations. She's studying mindfulness and facilitation at UCLA, the founder of MEISOU. Life as Ritual creates incredible experiences, retreats, and products to help people embed ritual, mindfulness, and meaning into their lives. So this is a brilliant conversation on the intersection between the internal world and the external world, and an invitation into ritual and sacred activism in this time in a way that honors both the inner and outer, and honors our privilege. So enjoy and look forward to hearing your thoughts. Grab a tea, take a breath, notice the inhale, the exhale, and the space between. A moment in between moments. Here you are. You're listening to Spaces Between with your friend and host, L. Jeffrey. An open exploration into restoring connection in the 21st century in our personal lives, our relations, and our communities. What does it mean to live in relationship to the wholeness of who we are together? I'm not one for ads and am one for creating something beautiful with others, in this case, you. So if you enjoy our time together, I do invite you to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rate and leave a review for the show. And if you're feeling super generous and fueled and filled up by our conversations, you might even consider donating or soon joining my Patreon membership. Just visit www.spacesbetweenpodcast.com, where you'll also find show notes and other useful links and resources following these conversations. So this is it. Let's dive in. All right. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time for a conversation this evening for me and this afternoon for you.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here joining you from Bali in a time that, we are in isolation, but in the same time feel so that we are getting closer with technology. So it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it doesn't feel like too long ago when we met and straight away ended up having conversations that we thought were podcast worthy. And then we sat down and recorded one very impromptu. So it's nice to be here again, albeit on different continents, but recording another hopefully emergent conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've always, and I suppose to frame some of the threads that I hope to get into through our conversation, always admired the, I suppose, commitment to intention and integrity that you live with, and really building congruence and a bridge between your inner world and your outer work in the world. The kind of way in which you live aligned with your values, and constantly check in with yourself. I mean, that really speaks to MEISOU and life as ritual as well. So I look forward to diving into that as a way of framing our conversation. But I'm curious, how are you making sense of this time that we're in? I mean, we kind of have this twin pandemic of sorts, one being COVID and coronavirus, and now with also Black Lives Matter and the surfacing of these kind of radical social injustices. So we're really straddling some very groundless territory. How are you finding yourself amidst it and making sense of it all?
Yeah, it's such a interesting time, and I feel like personally, I before coming to Bali and changing my lifestyle, I come originally from Brazil, and my background was in business administration, business management, and somehow I felt like I was really unhappy doing that. I felt really disconnected and longing for a sense of meaning in my life. So when I moved to Bali and I start looking for a way of living more mindfully and more meaningfully, I kind of went through a very disconstructive process. My structures were disconstructed. So honestly, right now, I feel all the challenge that I was going through those years that I went through this construction kind of gave me the base to be in this moment and not feel so shaky about it and feels like, okay, I know, I can feel empathy and understanding and compassion for a lot of people that are feeling really scared and anxious about this uncertain time because I went through, but I feel like that was like I was preparing the ground for something that was coming up, but I didn't know that was coming up. So somehow I feel like I was like being prepared. So right now it feels like I've been more understood. There is like more room for conversations about topics that we didn't have so much room before, and feels like there is like a lot of opportunity for us to meet in an equal way with different people from different backgrounds that are going through a very strong questioning about the way how we are living in the world. So feels like, wow, this is incredible that we are going through such a big time of transformation and change. And more people are questioning, like, are we doing things correctly in the world? Are we, why certain things were happening and we were allowing those, like injustice, for example, why we were supporting that and not even knowing that we were supporting that. So feels it's a very exciting time for me to, talk more openly about those topics and be more relatable to people in that sense. And in the same time, I feel that COVID, together with Black Lives Matters, the social injustice, financial imbalance that we are going through globally, they are like, for me personally, I'm in a study mode. And I decided to step back and learn and hear more and exchange with people to see how we can actually learn from this experience with openness and curiosity and see what we can develop together. And in the very beginning of COVID, I felt uncomfort. Like, okay, how is the world is going to be? Is that really happening for 1 month to 2 months, or this is going to keep happening for the rest of the year, and it's going to shape our reality for some time that we are not sure about it. So it was a lot of uncomfort being in not knowing or not having the answers. And then after the first month came a sense of relief for changing the way how we were living. That was really fast paced, with a lot of information and we a lot of attention in doing, even though I've been connected in the mindfulness field and creating things, working for MEISOU, my brand, in a more mindful and meaningful way. We are all connected, right? So we are all impacted by the choices we are all doing. Even though we wanted to take life slowly, there is a lot of demand and pressure from the outside to respond in a different way. So came a big sense of relief to stop and just give time to life to unfold, and be in this unknown, in this space in between that you know really well.
Yeah, I love the I forget exactly how you phrased it, but that it's invited or opened up the possibility to have different conversations, to talk about things that we don't normally talk about, which makes me think of David White. And for those who have listened to a number of episodes, will probably be sick of me rambling on about David White, but if you haven't checked him out already, do. David White always speaks about having a deeper conversation with life, or a deeper conversation with others, or having the conversations that we don't want to be having, the conversations we hope to tiptoe around. But life keeps bringing up these conversations that are courageous and difficult and uncomfortable, but they're the ones that need to be had if we're going to grow through life. And he always speaks about that the easiest way to deepen a conversation is to stop the one that you're currently having. And then once you've stopped the conversation you're currently having, automatically the invitation for a deeper conversation will reveal itself. Which is kind of, a lovely poetic way to surmise, what I also feel has been this time, to kind of stop the conversation we're having, which initially feels like some kind of rapture, some uncomfortable sever of normality and how we thought it to be. But then it really does invite us into, I suppose, contemplating some of the biggest existential questions of human life, which is meaning and roles and relationships, and who am I without roles and these relationships that I relied on so heavily? What's been some of the conversations or questions that people are asking that I suppose have been most exciting or inspiring for you? Like, what have been some topics of inquiry that people are going into, or that people are inviting you into?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Thank you for that. I really love that. And also what you just shared is like beautiful. And what is coming up in my conversations, I have to say, it's like a lot of uncomfortable things are coming up, especially for, working in a community in the mindfulness field. In UCLA, we are a very diverse group, and we have people from all backgrounds, from all skin colors and financial backgrounds as well. And we all come together and we share our feelings and thoughts and experiences around mindfulness with a lot of honesty and openness. And I'm the only international student in the group. And it's interesting because we've been talking a lot about diversity and how we can actually make a difference with all our differences as human beings. And in the way how we relate to each other in the everyday life, seems like it's not, for example, the Black Lives Matters, what is happening right now in the United States and all over the world, seems like it's not about the big event that happened with George Floyd, but it's about the tiny things that we collect as humans, not only the Black community, but as humans, we collect a little bit of rejection, or we collect a little bit of pleasant or unloving situations in the way how we relate to people, because it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to look at another human being and deal with our differences. We don't learn in school to embrace those differences. And even with our own selves, we don't know how to embrace the discomfort that comes up for, individually. And how we gonna, embrace the uncomfort that we feel when we deal with another human being, with our differences, with our different ways of thinking, or liking or disliking certain things. And the collection of those little uncomfortable and unpleasant situations, they become, along the years, they become something so big and that we can't handle anymore. And we have to talk about it. and we have to expose all that, and find a way to heal this. And so for me and my relationships at the moment with my partner or my friends here in Bali, because I have a very international community as well, or in my academic setting, has been a lot of that, like how can we embrace our own unpleasant experiences and find room to live, in peace with each other and find more understanding in the way how we relate to each other. And so far, our conclusion has been like, we have to start this process of dealing or handling the discomfort starting from ourselves, with our inner experience. And eventually, when we find more peace or acceptance in this space of dealing with our discomfort, or even shifting our perception about, how life should be or how we should be, then becomes easier also to relate to others, because we know that is a human condition. I hope made sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's they're very sometimes confronting conversations to have when we start to realize how very much a part of the injustice we are, because of these kind of presuppositions, these biases, these cognitions, impulses that we have on such a minute scale, but repeated over time, and they become a whole culture. And I mean, for me, that's why I'm so curious about integral theory, as it is so much an embedment between how culture really is a series of interactions, and the quality of those interactions inform the quality of the culture, and the quality of our own inner lives and ability to regulate and co-regulate and make sense and etc. inform the quality of those interactions. And so it really is foundationally built on the relationship to ourselves and how much of understanding, awareness, insight, and compassion we have for ourselves. But then it's also, I'm curious on your perspective on this, but it's and also can be seen as such a privileged position to be taking in this time, to say that, we all just need to sit down, inquire, to do the inner work, whilst perceivably it can seem that there is also so much urgency and radical change, and suffering is real for many people. And so when they're faced with this kind of privileged position of, we all just need to sit down and do the inner work, it can seem that for many people it's like, no, fuck that. There is real systemic change to be made. Like, you can't just sit on your meditation cushion and we'll just suck it up for the time being and spend another 50 years until you wake up. How do you
Totally.
Yeah, how do you respond to that, or what's your perspective on, I suppose, it is balancing the kind of the root of the cause or the challenge, which is kind of consciousness raising. But then now that we have these such strong, powerful, systemic and cultural forces at play where change is perceivably quite urgent, how do we balance that?
Al, has been a question that I've been inquiring for a couple of weeks as well, because, I'm a Latina, and I've been, I experienced a lot of racism in the United States in certain areas. So I know how it feels in a certain level, but I think we just can fully understand how somebody feels if we are in their own shoes, right? So we can just like imagine, but not have 100% sure. And I see like, yes, there is a lot of urgency in shifting the way how we've been handling and accepting certain ways of relating to each other as human beings. And there is a lot of rage out there, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. And in the same time that I feel that is important to go out to the streets and just protest and express our feelings and our indignation about this social injustice, I feel that, like, ideally, this is my perception. Doesn't mean it's correct, but so far from the reflection that I've been doing and the writing that I've been doing, it's there is like a lot of expectation in that the government or the system and the structure that we live in will be in a certain way, and we're gonna receive things that we want and we need from somebody or from something in the outside of us. So in Brazil, for example, we are having a lot of problems in the political system, and we have this expectation that our politicians will be solving all the social problems that we have. But nobody is really getting involved in the change practically. So I see in this case, as an example, I see that we can only participate in change if we change our inner world and the way how we relate to those aspects that we see outside of us internally, because they are just a reflection of how we are inside. There is not, in my opinion, there is not a separation, of the reality that we experience out in the world and the reality that we experience internally. So the way how I've been, navigating the situation and trying to make sense of it and find a way to contribute also is just like, what can I do individually? It's standing up and participate more actively through the change I want to make in the world. I would like to make in my life, in my inner world, and also with the people around me, is starting small and impacting, people that I connect, people that I meet in a restaurant here in Bali. But I don't see that there is a separation between the reality that we experience internally and the reality that we experience outside of us. And there is a lot of, for me, like I've been questioning, like, why we are not claiming for the place we wanted to be, why we are not taking the place we wanted to occupy, and what we are waiting for, and why do we have to ask permission to take this space that is it's our human right. And it's up to us to shift also this paradigm, this perspective, because I think it's easy. We can easily fall into the victimhood, and we've been like in suffering a lot from injustice, but we are not stepping in and claiming from our space. So I think is our consciousness is shifting, and we are getting clear that we needed to claim for what is our human right. So that's the biggest shift and clarity that I've been understanding and seeing happening in myself, in my relationship with myself, with my friends and family members. Is like, okay, I'm not a victim. I can actually, take the claim for my power, my true power, without violence and without frustration and rage. It's up to me. So I see that is a lot of things related to self-responsibility and self-responsibility.
Yeah. And in you sharing, just hear, how to phrase this? I hear you doing exactly what it is that you're speaking about, which is to feel your way to your own answers, like in the way that you reflect and really, I suppose, come close into your own relationships with those around you, and to sit with yourself and reflect. and have your answers come from that place, to come from that contemplative, self-reflective, kind of inquiry-based approach to life. And that if we all did that, then sure, we might still be protesting or we might still be doing what we're doing, but it would have a different energy about it. It would have maybe a more rooted, grounded, powerful, and still compassionate and open energy. Yeah, you kind of hear that it's about, claiming our power, but having it, I suppose, like a higher power is maybe that our power doesn't mean less power for somebody else. Like our power is our power, is what I'm kind of hearing. Is that kind of resonating?
Yes, absolutely. And it's also redefining power, right? Because we think power, it's about taking from somebody else. But true power is about occupying our inner space with presence. That's how I see power. I see power as full presence and showing up with presence. So occupying that space internally, with presence, occupying that space with people around us with presence, and occupying all the relationships we cultivate around us. It's with our neighbors or with animals or with earth. And that's how I define real power is presence.
Yeah, I love that it's, not really, a power has nothing to do with anybody else. It's kind of a way that I might put it, that it's not some hierarchy of like, you're here and I'm here. And so somehow that means you're more powerful, or power has nothing to do with that actually. It's got a lot to do with the quality of one's inner capacity to, I suppose, to meet others and meet life with resilience and with insight and with compassion. So how would you, and I'm curious about ritual. We speak about ritual a fair bit, and I know MEISOU and a lot of your work is around how life is ritual. And so I'm curious to hear more about that, but then what that might look like in this time. So for you, when you say life is ritual or life as ritual, what is that? When I even say that, I hear a vision behind those words, life as ritual. I hear a kind of a vision for a life. What is that vision that you have for a life that is ritual itself?
Yeah, life, it's interesting. It's a very interesting question because it's already so embodied in my daily life that, I have to close my eyes and reconnect to this space. But when I was in Brazil, I was longing for a life where I could live more meaningfully. And when I came to Asia, I saw a lot of beautiful practices where they integrate rituals and meaning in their daily life. And I felt really inspired in incorporating that in my routine. And for me, ritual has changed the energy of my day and has changed the way how I do things, how I create things. And I really enjoy starting my day with that meaningful practice. So I would say ritual and meaning, it's for me has a common denominator. They have the same meaning. And rituals can be, anything that we really love doing and brings us joy and connection to the present moment and with nature. That's how I see meaning. And I've been practicing my rituals every morning, for example, waking up and just walking around in nature and feeling, especially here in Bali, feeling the sun touching my skin and waking up slowly and just, reconnecting with the land for me, this is a ritual. And waking up slowly and connecting with the nature elements really brings me a sense of meaning and connection and a deep understanding, like about why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Helps me to reconnect to the reasons behind I do things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that my daily meditation is one of my rituals as well, like waking up, walking in nature, checking how, the weather, and then grabbing a cup of tea. And tea is also like a beautiful ritual. It's a really beautiful ritual, the way how, we prepare that morning tea and we sit with that tea and really connect with the nature elements in that cup of tea, the water, the steam, the herbs that was inside of the cup, and really just enjoy that moment with presence and not rushing, and the element of not rushing, it's a key element for me. I would love to know how it's for you, because I know you're a ritual lover.
Yeah.
And what means ritual for you, and how rituals look like for you in your daily life?
Yeah, for me, ritual it's definitely a practice. So a practice and for me, a practice is something that's done with intention. And yeah, something that maybe a way to put it is a practice that you have and it doesn't have you. So it's something that you're not reactive with. It's not something you avoid things by doing. It's something that you choose to do over and over again. And yeah, for me, rituals also means phone on silent, face down and out of the room. Like it's a stepping into sacred time out of mundane or profane time, where there is time, there is calendars, there are text messages, there are all these distractions. And so for me, distraction-free space is also important for a ritual. Kind of helps me drop into a relationship with a different kind of time, or maybe timelessness. I think for me, an intention with ritual is to connect with the intimacy and the sensitivity of what it means to be in my body in this world. So to pay attention to reciprocity between myself and the room and the warmth of the room, or the hue of the light or the sun on the skin, like to pay attention to that dance that we're in with the environment and everything, nature around us, which humbles me, but then also inspires me. I feel like ritual for me is about cultivating a pocket of remembering wholeness, which is to remember my smallness and my bigness at the same time, to remember my vulnerability and my absolute, like, mysterious, wondrous power all at the same time. So, meditation's a big one.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, resonate so much. It's interesting how much ritual is connected to this intimate relationship with our most inner being and the outer world as well, right? It's like a bridge between these two spaces, ourselves and the outside world.
Yeah, it's very, I've loved just contemplating where myself ends and where the world begins, or where my body ends and where the world begins. And like the study of phenomenology and what it means to live, how it actually feels to live. And there's the idea that our body, is constantly in reciprocity with the world, where we exist in relationship with the world around us. And you cannot abstract self from world or world from self. But that there is this space where the world ends and the body begins. And in that space, there is this dance, there's this reciprocity between each of them. And that for me, ritual is about connecting with that space, that kind of sensitivity, that listening quality that is really curious about, like, what of me am I gifting to the world and how is it influencing me? And it's really listening to that space, the space between that.
The space in between.
Yeah.
Yes.
That really brings humility and also awe and mystery. And when I don't notice that space and I get lost in the to-do list or lost in structured time, that's when I know I need more ritual.
Same.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like that in MEISOU, I feel the creative process of designing the objects, it's a ritual for me. It's like that space in between that I relate to the materials. It's one of the rituals that I like to practice as well. It's a way that I relate to the materials and colors and textures and smells, and also connecting with people here in Bali, where they have so many skills and so many practices, and that exchange for me, it's such a beautiful ritual, and feels like I'm never working.
Yeah.
When I'm in the design process, and I feel really blessed that I found a way to integrate what I do with rituals and make like an extension of, you know, this intimate space to also inspire people to create their own rituals. And there is for me, there is not a recipe that I follow every day, and that's my ritual, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But the ritual is like, what do I really need, you know, to connect to myself and create that reciprocity that you were talking about between those needs and what I'm experiencing in this very moment, and having that, you know, like, sensibility to notice what is needed. Maybe it's just like have a nice bath, or you know, just, you know, walk around in nature. That can be also a ritual, right? And we have the freedom and the creativity to explore how we feel when we create those spaces of ritual.
Yeah, and also at the same time, that kind of that sensibility, that ability to discern what ritual needs to be done, or not needs to be done, but wants to be sat with or explored. For some, I suppose there's a need for a practice to cultivate that way of thinking or discerning in the outset. Maybe for those who haven't practiced maybe some more self-awareness or insight-based practices, and maybe do find it challenging to separate what are other people's needs of me and what are my actual needs, and to have that discerning mind in the outset. Sometimes there can be the need to actually have a structured ritual to develop that cognition or that metacognition, to then be able to just in the moment be able to ask constantly, what do I need? What do I need? What do I need?
I agree.
Yeah, sometimes useful, I suppose, to have a committed ritual. And maybe just for those listening, if it's not something that you have done before and you feel like maybe it is a bit challenging to constantly be able to actually discern and be aware of what your need is, to have a structured ritual, which is maybe journaling or meditation for a period of time, to start to develop that awareness. And then hopefully afterwards, it is more of just a reflective, fluid process rather than a regimented practice of sorts.
I agree. Totally agree with you. I think in the beginning, have consistency in practicing something. It's really helpful to help us to hear, to develop that inner listener, you know, like, okay, what do I really need right now when I feel out of balance, and create that inner awareness about ourselves and our needs, and what is the right action in a certain time. And yeah, definitely. And I know I'm the guest here, but I love so much the way how you express yourself. It's so beautiful. I learned so much from you. I could be I could be talking here for ages.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one that learned so much from you. And taking the opportunity, you know, to learn from you and seeing the potential of this podcast inspiring people to create rituals as well, I would love to know, what is your suggestion? Like, if somebody's starting, like, okay, I want to develop an inner listener where I know what I need. And how, for you, what is your suggestion to develop this inner listener? And what is the practice that you see that has been beneficial for yourself and can be beneficial for others?
Yeah. Great question. And thank you for the kind words. It's nice to have have it be more of a reciprocal dance between us rather than me asking all the questions. Yeah. I would say for me, in my own journey, the idea of cohering one's body, mind, and higher mind or spirit, of course, and creating a coherence, a dialogue, a conversation between the aspects of the self, so that we're not only living from the mind, we're not only living from the heart, we're not only living from intuition, which sometimes, in my experience, in many cases, intuition can be a word that's used to describe what actually is a distorted cognition sometimes. Some people might say they're just following their intuition, but actually it's just a pre-conscious pattern that they maybe are not aware of, but it can feel nice to just call it intuition. And so for me, it's important. And for me, the aim of my practices is to create coherence where my intuition, my heart, my mind, my ability to mentalize things are actually working together. And if something feels true intuitively and also in my heart, but my mind can't make sense out of it, then that's fine. It's just, I suppose, finding a way to have my mind still be included at the table. So not to other my mind. But if I prioritize intuition, but I'll always check my intuition against myself. Like, is there bias here? Is there avoidance here? Is there cultural stuff that I'm carrying here? Like, what's actually in this intuition or this intuitive sense? And I suppose I'll sit with it. But for me, the practice of building that ability to listen is just simply asking the body, firstly, what does it feel? So what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling quite tired. And then I'll ask, where in the body do I feel that? So that's about connecting to the body and sensation and affect, so emotion. And then I'll also ask, what does that part of my body need? And so what am I feeling? Where am I feeling that? What does that part of my body need? And that's for me, just about opening up a conversation with the body and having that dialogue. And for me, because for most of my life, I have lived shoulders up, where the body, my heart, and everything below my head really was not involved in my life. It's just about strengthening that conversation. And so a simple check-in, like, how do I feel? Where is that in my body? And what does it need? Starts to develop that ability to listen in. And then, there's
beautiful.
Lots of journaling and lots of course, meditation and just conversation as well. I find many of these practices in isolation are great, but in relationship for me is where a lot of the work gets integrated. So it's actually quite easy to be aware of how I'm feeling when I'm sitting by myself on my meditation cushion, but to be in conversation with somebody who maybe is talking about something that is a little bit maybe emotionally charged for me, to learn how to be aware of my inner system and to cohere and regulate my body in the presence of that is, for me, how we really bring this work to the world. And so it's learning how to bridge our private practices to social spaces that, a kind of topic that I've been reflecting on a lot is, how can we make our personal realizations and personal revelations a social revolution? How do we make our personal revelations more than personal revelations? And for me, that is about how we then bring these to those relational contexts.
And it's very interesting that it's a lot, like, there is a lot of to do with what we are experiencing globally right now, right? Like, we are seeing a lot of content being revelated and shared, and it's an amazing opportunity to grow because we are invited to come out of our comfort zones and think and reflect in ways that we never reflected before, and find new neuron pathways and open up our consciousness and being open and curious about how much we are open to receive and give and learn from this experience. I have a quick question. Is that practice, the body check-in, is that there is a name for that practice officially, or?
No, I mean, you could do it. I'll give it a name right now. We'll call it 3 breaths. No, so I mean, it can be useful to link it to the breath. So there's also a physiological down-regulating, but it could be the first breath, what am I feeling? Second breath, where is that in my body? Third breath, what does it need? There we go. 3 breaths. Book comes out next year.
Great. Love it. I'm definitely gonna practice this.
Yeah.
I love this suggestion.
But I'm also curious, and I suppose as a way of starting to bring it together into some more practical things that people can be doing in this time to, as we spoke about, to do that inner inquiry work so that we can show up with maybe a little bit more integrity, a little bit more sincerity, and show up in ways that is maybe not clouded by fear or judgment or comparison or othering. What are some questions that you might, I suppose, offer to people to journal on or reflect on? Like if people were to have a couple of questions that might be useful for them to sit with.
The questions that I suggest, especially for, taking in consideration everything that we shared here to create a relationship with our inner listener, I think is very important to develop that relationship with oneself. And a question is it's a very wide question, but I feel it's really powerful. It's very powerful for me. It's who am I? Who am I? And really inquiry who we are, who am I? And really connect with and be curious to understand and listen and listen. Who am I? Not the who am I from the conditionings and we received from our parents or from education, but who am I truly, or who am I not right now? Who am I being right now that, it's bringing suffering to my own experience? And I think just sitting with that question can unfolding a lot of insights and a lot of transformation, and how I'm contributing to the change or the suffering in the world. And those questions, I guess all of us as humans in some point of our life, we did those self-inquiries before. And when we sit intentionally holding a space to honestly hear the truth about who we are and who we are not, can unfold in a lot of positive transformation.
Yum. Yeah. And I suppose I also just want to say, because there can be a tendency for, and maybe for those listening, these large questions that feel almost cliche, there can be a tendency to disregard the questions that are actually most important for us to ask, because they do feel cliche. Yeah, and maybe that's an unfortunate byproduct of how the media's portrayed them, or how, I don't know. I mean, for me, because I used to ask those questions as a teenager, friends and family would think that I was being too serious and tell me to ease off, Elle, stop taking life so serious. And it's kind of, we then wash those questions away. But they're the questions that have us face the kind of existential truths of what it means to be human, which is, to die to the fact that sometimes life has no meaning and sometimes it's absolutely meaningful, and these kind of realities of what it means to be human. If we can sit with those big questions, maybe we'll develop more resilience and ability to sit with them with a little bit more grace. So yeah, I love the simple question. And I suppose I'm just echoing and inviting those listening to maybe actually write the question down and to set aside, make it a ritual, set aside 15, 30, 60 minutes to actually sit and feel what the question brings up.
Yeah. And for those who are interested in learning more about the power of those questions, self-inquiry, I recommend Gary Weber. He's an author. He was studying Ramana Maharishi for a couple of years, and he became free from suffering. And he has no activity in his brain in the sense of the ego. And he teaches the power of those questions.
Yeah.
And how much is reflected, those questions are reflected and linked with the reflection of the suffering we experience internally and also in the co-creation of our reality out there.
Wow. What was his name again?
Gary Weber.
Gary Weber. Great. I'll put that book in the show notes. I'll put his work in the show notes.
Happiness Beyond Thought is the name of his book.
Right. Great. All right. Well, this has been, as expected, an emergent and electric conversation. Very relevant, very timely. And yeah, I mean, I've reflected on with a number of people how it's almost scary to talk about this time because there's a fear of coming across the wrong way, of getting it wrong, of not being politically correct enough or not acknowledging privilege. And yeah, so it's been really nice to acknowledge that we don't know, to acknowledge that also maybe we did fumble our way through some things, but also that, yeah, I feel like we brought some light to some crucial aspects and questions that we should be sitting with in this time if we are to move forward to a new world that is a little bit less clouded by fear and more illuminated by maybe love and compassion and clear insight.
Yes, and I want to take the opportunity to just say that firstly, it's a beautiful opportunity to be here talking to you. And second is like this sharing, it's openness to evolve, to more understanding about those topics. Whatever I shared here is, it's just reflections, and I'm in an ongoing process of learning, and I'm really open and curious to develop and learn more about, social injustice and Black Lives Matters. And if there is anything I said here that didn't feel right, I just want to, apologize in advance, because I've been trying my best to learn and share from an honest space. And I hope we can, as humans, create that space to reflect with honesty and resilience and compassion, and always grow from the opportunities we create to exchange with each other. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Is there any place that you'd prefer people or invite people to connect with you further?
Yes, you guys can check out my Instagram, Jessica Multini. I share my work there. I offer some mindfulness classes through social media and also Zoom. So if you're interested in knowing more about my work, please feel free to reach out and connect. Instagram is a good channel for that.
Lovely.
For now, let's see.
Yeah. And I'll link that in the show notes as well. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's time to get up and dance about and move the body. Yeah. And here's to the inner work informing the outer work. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all.
What questions are still whirring inside for you? What landed and rung loudly for you? Let's take a moment. Thank you for joining me for another life-affirming and enriching conversation, each one a light, a torch to guide us on our path to being in right relationship with ourselves, those we walk with, and the ecologies we are very much a part of. I trust this has gifted you something to place in your toolkit to support you in your journey and your leadership. Make sure to connect with me and leave any comments on my Facebook or Instagram page at ljeffrey, and check out the links in the show notes. This show is completely funded by listeners just like you, so if you feel generous and wish to be part of nourishing these inquiries that we're exploring together, you can leave a once-off donation or soon subscribe to my Patreon membership. Show notes, resources, and donations are all at www.spacesbetweenpodcast.com. Until next time, remember, we can't rush our way back. Notice connections and tend to the sweet, sweet spaces between. Lots of love. Thank you.